Welcome to Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-Commerce. I'm Elise, your resident tech expert and author of the book Browser versus Buyer. I've worked with e-commerce shop owners for over 6 years, and I've helped hundreds of creatives overcome their technology fears. Gain clarity and direction in your business with Elise's E-Commerce Elevator 6-month group coaching program. Join now at MyScheduledBiz.com/elevator. The link is in the show notes. All right, hello, Bizzers. Today, we're going to be talking with Tanya Elliott from TJE Design Studio. She's an occupational therapy practitioner and artist. Tanya creates beautiful diffuser jewelry that is unique and therapeutic. Her passion is to make aromatherapy beautiful, convenient, and ever-present in our daily lives. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand why she chooses to use vendor events in her business and why it is so important to consider for your business, the technology that's required, and of course, walk away with one action step. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Happy to be here.
Glad to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about your business and your experience with e-commerce?
Yes, I started designing jewelry probably like 20 years ago, and it was just like a hobby. I did do different vendor events, and I enjoyed my time, but I still had small children, and so that kind of went to the back burner, and I was raising my children. About, I would think, 2014 or so, I started doing aromatherapy. And as Elise said, I'm an occupational therapist and I still practice. And I wanted to find a way to use aromatherapy in my practice in everyday life. And I decided, and I like fashion, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back. So I took my skill as a jewelry designer and now as a therapist, and I put them together because there was nothing out on the market for that at that time. And so like I said, about 2014, I started doing that, and I started going back to some of those craft vendor events, and it really took off. It took off really well for about 2 years, and I do love vendor events. It's a great way to connect with people. But I felt like at the time, having a website kind of felt like that makes me legit. This isn't like a little side hobby or a craft that I happen to make money on. It was something that I was really, really serious about. So I built a website. I'm not tech savvy whatsoever. Used a program, built my website, but it just kind of sat in the background because my love was actually going to vendor events. And I was picking up vendor events about every other weekend. I traveled all over the United States, and my website was there. It's I had Elise come in at some point and look at it and take a look to make sure it was what people want to see, but I didn't really have it. I just kind of had it there to say, oh yeah, I have a website. And I had it there for holiday times when I can't go to different places. I can have a holiday sale. I can have a Mother's Day sale. But outside of that, I didn't do too much e-commerce. Well, then 2020 hit. And because of that, I was forced to really embrace the e-commerce. And it wasn't fun. I did not vendor events. I really enjoyed, it wasn't fun for me. It could be fun for other people, but I really enjoy meeting the people that purchase my items. But it forced me to get more tech savvy. Now, as far tech savvy as I am, not that much, but I am a little bit more tech savvy. And then now I'm taking it and using it actually now as I'm going back out doing vendor shows. So it's my business and my e-commerce presence has changed since 2014, but having Elise and different coaches like that in the background have really, really helped me.
Yeah, so I mean, you basically kind of started where a lot of makers start. They're making something kind of for themselves and just kind of doing it. And then people are encouraging you to go and sell that to other people, or they ask you where you got it and they want to buy it from you. It's the same story that we hear from a lot of makers. And yeah, 2020, when the vendor shows all shut down, I know that was a huge hit for a lot of people. So, I mean, I think it's really great that you were able to embrace that and just kind of step into the next thing. Tanya, tell our listeners why they should care about vendor shows and craft markets. So you said you love them, you enjoy that interaction, but what about the people that are like, I really don't know about that?
Well, actually, I'm an introvert in personality. So I'm very quiet. I don't like to go out and sell things, except as a therapist. When I'm working as a therapist, I'm there. I'll for you. I'm excited about it. and my jewelry. I'm super, super excited about it. And it makes me want to connect with people. Being at a vendor show, I can meet my customers, and literally my business grew because of all those interactions. I had customers, not because they were buying more from me. They were giving me the ideas of what they wanted to see. Jewelry in general is very, very saturated, and it can be very disheartening when I'm at a craft event and every other table is jewelry. How do you make yourself different? And I was really, really excited because to me, my jewelry isn't just something pretty to put on. To me, it's so much more. And I got to get to share that with people as they come up to my table. So it helps me figure out what my next collection will be. It helps me connect with people. It helps me provide what I want to give my customer as part of my business, my goal for my business. And so vendor events I think, are invaluable to go to, even a poorly attended event. I have been to many poorly attended, but I made connections with other people around me, with other vendors. And it's just every single time it's helped propel me on to the next step. I think vendor events are a great way to get out, to get to know your customer, and to share the love of your product.
So let's take this down to a nitty-gritty level, because I can hear the questions as people are listening to this, okay? So all of that sounds wonderful, and I think that's great. And obviously, we need to engage with our customers so that we can figure out what they want, so we can make it so that they can buy it, right? That is all invaluable. And I think, having been at vendor events myself, I know there is kind of this camaraderie between you and the people around you, and it's just kind of a opportunity to connect on something that you maybe wouldn't be connecting otherwise. So I completely agree with you. But at the same time, the real question everybody wants to know is, how much money do you make at vendor events? So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. You can refuse to answer if you would like. But for your business, what percentage of your sales comes from vendor events versus your, say, website or some other location?
90%.
So the question is, can you get sales at these vendor events? And I think the resounding answer to that is yes, right?
Yes.
So like you said, there's poorly attended vendor events. Maybe you don't make as much, but they help you get ready for the next vendor event that might be bigger. I know some vendor events have a high cost of entry, but those are the ones where you make more sales. So I think there is probably a step-by-step process building up to those bigger shows where you can make more money. Do you think?
Yes. Okay. And you need to pace yourself. You know, I started my business has all been built on itself. I did a vendor event. People liked my product. I made some money. I reinvested that money in myself, and over and over and over. I've never went out and said, I'm going to do a really expensive vendor event and I not consider food and travel and time, because I do not want to go. So you really need to gauge and start small and build yourself up. Just don't go in and spend all your money in an investment that you won't get back.
And I think also it's important to go into it with a realistic expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know more vendor events you do, the more comfortable you feel with them. Mm-hmm. Well, your customers can feel that. So you can't go to your first vendor event and be like, I'm going to make $10,000 at this vendor event. You've never done it before. Your display is probably terrible. You don't know how to engage with customers yet. So you have to have realistic expectations. And I think that's the real thing with vendor events, because I hear from clients, oh, vendor events don't work for me. I don't think that that's necessarily accurate. Maybe you didn't give them a fair shake, or there's something that can be changed up to make them better for you.
And are you giving what your customer wants?
Exactly. Are you listening and hearing that feedback that Tanya talked about, so important to your business?
I was at in the spring, I was at the show that I've been to many times, and it does very, very well for me. And it just kind of fell flat. So I had another show after that, and I noticed I was talking with my customers. I was watching their habits. I was watching them as they shopped with other people. I talked to the other vendors and say, what's the feel you're getting from the customers around here? And I took all that information, and I had a show 3 or 4 weeks later, and I took all that information and I decided, okay, my highest cost is usually, I don't know, it could be $75. And I was noticing people weren't purchasing at all. So knowing all that, I only brought items. So my $50 was my top. So gave them a base on there. And then most of my products were priced lower because I was realizing with the economy of travel, of everything that's just going on right now in our world, that I needed to drop down a little bit. I didn't drop my prices. I just dropped
different items.
I showed different items. I made sure, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have more $10 items than I am going to have my $50 items. And I actually made more at this show, and it had 200 people, and the other one had 3,000 people. So it was just seeing and talking, and not just going home and throw in the towel and say, I'm done. No one wants to buy this. There's jewelry every other vendor, because I was next to jewelry people on either side of me.
Right.
So those are the things you have to learn and take into account.
Yeah, I completely agree 100%. So you have to be paying attention. It is not just show up, set up your booth, and sit there.
No, you have to be flexible.
All right, so let's move on. Of course, this podcast is all about technology. So how can technology overwhelm makers when they try to use it for vendor events? What do they need for vendor events? What can become cumbersome to them or that can be a problem?
One of the first things I learned, first off, I was at a small craft fair. It was all a brick building. I couldn't get my Wi-Fi to connect.
And why is that important?
Well, there's payment that's required. You need a way to process payments. And whether you use PayPal, whether you use Square, it doesn't really matter. You need Wi-Fi. And I was by myself at the show. Every time I made a sale, I had to go into the lobby and run a sale if they didn't have cash. Leave all my stuff and go to the lobby and run a card. And after that, I decided, and then other times I was lucky. It was a big event. I'm talking like 300, 400 people. We're in a well-known hotel, so you're going to have Wi-Fi, but we're all pulling from the same Wi-Fi. So that slows down the Wi-Fi. My customers are getting agitated because they were at the last booth and the Wi-Fi didn't work correctly. Then they think they're being double charged because Wi-Fi. So I carry a hotspot with me, or whatever you want to do, no matter where I go, and I use my own hotspot. Even if the hotel offers me, or if it's part of my package for a vendor event, I bring my own Wi-Fi. I am not going to be going this far, doing all this work and not have Wi-Fi. So along with Wi-Fi, you got to make sure you got battery backup. You have to make sure you didn't leave your cords in the hotel. All those little things that you have to think about to process the sale is what's important. I learned right away about using tech. And this was before, like I said, 2020. So I didn't use any other tech other than that. But since I was forced to, I have now using tech in different ways at my show.
So I've had the same experience with not having internet where I couldn't process a sale. It is definitely something you don't want to deal with. So I highly recommend having a plan for that as well. So how are you using newer technology now? Not newer, but additional technology now for your vendor events?
Well, as I've said before, besides running a sale, I didn't do very much tech. And I started taking Elise's classes, which I highly recommend. And I was becoming more and more familiar with the tech. And what the tech, I mean, doing video, doing live video, how to use my phone to do video. I'm at an event, it's kind of slow. How can I use this time when all my products are actually set up and not in boxes in my studio? And I took that opportunity to now, when I've got a show, I can do a live, during a downtime, I could do a live event really quick, and I can get on and I'm comfortable with it. It's not perfect, but I can get on. And actually the show that I did in spring, I actually made sales online through a live event at my own event. And then the opportunity is there that I can do video of when my booth was busy, or I could do a quick sweep of my products so people can see, and then using that later to use when I go back home and do any social media posts or anything like that. So I feel like that's pretty important. I haven't done this personally, but I thought about it because I hand make all my jewelry, and there's a process in that. And I know you can buy those digital frames of different sizes, and you can actually download. And if you're on TikTok or Instagram, you can actually download those videos you did off of Instagram and TikTok onto those frames and have them on the table. So you don't, people can see, oh, look what she did. This is how she shapes it. This is how she knots it. Or you can use it in a different way. If you have many different colors and designs, you don't have the room because you only got one 6-foot table because that's all you could afford at that time, you could have it running there at the table, and people actually can see, oh, those are the different colors. Oh, those are the different items. And using that tech in that way, it makes it a whole lot easier. Things I never even thought about before, but people are so used to tech and want to see it. And then they like to see if it came off of Instagram or TikTok, you know what? They instantly follow you. And there you go with another follower. They might not have purchased anything. They thought it was interesting, but they now following you on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. And then you can maybe like make sales with them later on.
And speaking of the connection that way, another thing that I definitely see a lot of vendors doing is they will put like an iPad or something out where people sign up for their email list right there while they're at the vendor event. So that's another way that you can use tech in your vendor booth at a vendor event. So yeah, I 100% agree. There's so many opportunities to bring that tech in. But at the same time, don't let all of that make you feel overwhelmed.
Oh.
Basic, what you have to have is the ability to process sales. So you need a processor, Stripe, PayPal. Yeah, there's a couple different ones you can use for processing, and you need to have internet so that it'll actually work. But once you get that established, there's all sorts of fun things you can play with and do with it after the fact.
Yes.
All right. So Tanya, I have one last thing to ask you. And this is something that a lot of my guests struggle with. So we're going to see how we do. What is your number one tip for our listeners when it comes to vendor events?
My number one tip, one A or one Z? My number one tip, and we've hit on it a couple times. So I truly have to say, this really is my number one tip, is connect with your audience. It's the one time that you can reach out and connect. I've had people come to me, they come up to my table. They don't even know I'm part of my table. I'm never behind my booth. It's always an open booth, and I'm right behind them. And I'll say, hi, my name's Tanya. I hand make all this jewelry. If you have any questions, let me know. They barely get a breath in. I say, well, let me give you a quick rundown. And I've got a spiel, really like a 30-second rundown of each type of different product. And they're like, oh, they're slightly overwhelmed, but they're like, oh, well, tell me more about this. And then we start talking, and then they'll say, oh, I need something for somebody. And we just start talking. And many times people walked away. They've prayed for me. They've hugged me. They've taken pictures with me, and they unknowingly just came up to my booth. It's making those connections with somebody when they're buying your product, and letting them know why it's important, why your product's important, and how that product will help them in the long run. So meeting with your customer. Don't sit behind the booth. Don't play on your phone. You're there. I do sit down when there's nobody there. I will sit down because my feet are killing me. And I lose my voice by the end of my show. I usually don't have a voice, but I am talking to people all the time. And another little side thing, because not everyone wants to talk to you. And I understand that, because I am an introvert. If I'm at a craft fair, don't approach me and start talking to me. That's not my deal. I offer free items at my booth that relate to my product. For instance, I have diffusers, and you put a little felt on the inside, and that's where you put your essential oils. And I have thousands of them. And I'm in a niche group. So most of my people are using essential oils. So they are familiar with this little pad. I offer them. I have them in buckets and baskets all over them. And I would hold it and I say, here, take as many as you want. And it starts a connection with somebody. Like, oh, thank you. Or I offer different little things to make that connection. Like, I'm not here for your sales 100%, but I am here to connect with you. And I just really believe meeting where your customer's at is the most important. And have fun. I have a blast at my shows for being an introvert.
So our one tip is to engage with our customers and to give them something for free if at all possible. That's
to engage with them, somehow to engage. Yes, but it's all about engagement.
So what about our listeners who are like, okay, Tanya, you're actually not an introvert. I'm listening to you on this podcast episode, and I can tell that you have stuff to say and you're having a conversation with Elise. I'm a real introvert and I can't say 2 words when I get to that vendor event, and there's no way that I can do what you're doing. Do you have any advice for them?
When someone asks you a question about your product and you're proud of it, even for a super, super shy person, I am an introvert, believe it or not. We're talking about something I love. So I'm here. There's something that you love, and there's something about the product that you love. And that's where you're going to hit on. Don't be afraid of the questions. When people ask you the questions, don't feel like you're an imposter. Okay. Sometimes when people ask you questions, I feel it. I feel like I'm being attacked. Is it going to rust? Is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? And I'm like, oh no, I use stainless steel because X, Y, and Z. If you are proud of your product and you're taking your product to a show that shows you're proud, don't be an imposter, be proud of it. I've had plenty of people walk away and tell me, I can get the same thing on Amazon. And I said, you can, but mine was hand drawn, hand designed, and actually it's very therapeutic.
Believe it or not, when I go to a vendor event, I cower in the corner. So when I used to do vendor events, I know I speak on camera, I'm on video constantly teaching, and also nobody would believe it, but I swear this is the truth. When I first started doing vendor events, I took my daughter with me, which at the time I think she was maybe 12. And I would make her talk to people because I couldn't do it. And I know, like, child labor, I'm sorry if I'm a terrible person, but the funny thing was people enjoyed talking to her so much. I think I actually made more sales because she was there. But what I learned from watching her, because she's definitely not an introvert at all, was that I just needed to have like a plan for what I was going to say. After the events, I would ask her, Olivia, how did you know to say that to that person? Like, how did you know where to start? And she was like, well, Mom, I just know that these are the things that people ask about your product. So I was just prepared to talk about whatever thing they were looking at. So I think a key for if you really are terrified, one option is to bring someone else with you who maybe isn't that way. That can really help. And then second, I literally sat down and memorized specific things that I would say to people about specific things because I was so terrified to talk to them. So I think even if you are an introvert, and a lot of makers I think really are, you can still make this work for you. You have to just get out there. It's like anything else. I teach a lot about video, like Tanya mentioned earlier. You just have to do it. You have to know it's probably going to be awful the first time and be okay with that and push through, and you can do it. And it can be a huge source of income for you, just like it is for Tanya.
I think it's great advice. I always have help with me. And I always apologize to the vendors next to me and the people across from me because I say the same thing. Literally, I have the same spiel and I say it every 2 minutes over and over. I think the people around me can repeat exactly what I say. Now, when it comes to introvert part, you know what I hate more than anything in the world of vendor events? The transaction. And so I have my kids do the transaction. And in the same way with Elise, my son, he's 18 years old, he'll do it. And he actually did it when he was young. And they're like, oh, he's so cute. He reminds me of my son or my grandson. So the exact same thing happened to Elise with Olivia. The same thing happened in this way, that people, when they were told their bill comes to $120, they're just so enthralled with my son, my daughter, who's running that. And they tell me they want to go to the bathroom. I make sure there's nobody around because I do not want to take a sale. That's where I've become very, very introvert. It petrifies me and I don't know why. But that's just the way it is. But I agree with Olivia. With Elise about Olivia, have somebody with you to back you up. And sometimes having an ongoing conversation between the other person and the other customer, you have a 3-way conversation going and you relax and you're able to tell about your product because they'll feel like they're just another friend.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So there you go. Our one tip,
One tip.
So Tanya, that is all we had for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If our listeners want to know more, they want to connect with you, maybe they're interested in your jewelry, where would you have them go?
You come to any vendor event and I would love to hug on you and talk more about it, because I do love talking to other vendors and they have questions, because it's hard. It's hard at first, but the good thing is it's a huge learning curve. So come to an event, or you can reach me at tjstudio.web and send me an email. I'll be happy to answer any questions and give any advice you might have, because I'm super excited about this part of business also, as well as making jewelry.
So definitely check out TJE Design Studio to look at what she has to offer and what she's doing with her products. And Tanya, again, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you guys can connect with her. Bye. If you like what we're doing here at Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-commerce, and it's helping you gain clarity and direction in your business, you should check out Elise's e-commerce elevator. In this 6-month group coaching program, I'll guide you through the ins and outs of building a business for purchase conversion. You'll also get to join up with a small group of other e-commerce shop owners who are focused on building exponential growth and reaching the right audience. Head over to myscheduledbiz.com/elevator and join us. We welcome a limited number of new members every 6 months, and by signing up today, you'll reserve your spot. Thanks for listening. See you next week right here on Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-commerce.